Hi Mikkel, I wanted to sort of show you a little bit about painting and these sort of things inside of Zbrush. So let's, I've just created this little model here, and this top one, I'm just going to subdivide this up a few times. We're going to actually put this into one of those colors that you've got. I think you've got a glow shader, which I don't know if I've got it in here. It's not something I use a lot of, an emissive shader. So I think you've grabbed that from somewhere, because I don't see that in my default setup. So let me just go and check on Pixelogic's site. Okay, so I've managed to find this kind of material here, which is good, and I kind of add a glow effect to it. I can't find the material that you've got, so I don't know where you've got it from. So I want to apply, you notice if I jump to here, this will just go into the color. This means I've applied no colors, no material or colors to any of these two subtools. So what I'll do is I go into material and I want to apply the material to this. Now it's just the material I'm going to add. So if I want to color it, I do RGB. If I want to do material and color, I would do mRGB. So in the material, I've selected, I'm on the right subtool. I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to fill the object. Now if I change to another object, this will stay the same, you see. And yeah, you'll notice that that's sort of locked. That's weird. All right, okay. So now if I want to change this other one, so I want to change this other material, I will go to something like the reflected metal. No, so I don't like that. No. Let's make it a plastic. That'd be nice. So that's a plastic, okay? I know I've got a welding seam going down it, but it's plastic. So if I want to change the material on this, I would go into the brush and I would go to color and fill object. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. Control Z, need to make sure I'm on the right subtool and fill the object. Now if I go out of this material now, none of these will change. But if I set up a new subtool, okay, I just come in here and I don't know, do a ring or something. Do that a couple of times, come back in here and append that into here like this, and scale it out and maybe do a little bit of rotation on it, I don't know. Then there we go, I've got that in there, and as you can see, if I change the material, that will change with it, which is cool. So let's divide it up a couple more times. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll put this into, I don't know, sort of maybe a kind of rubber, which is this kind of soft. So now I'm going to do the material and I'm going to put it into a color. So I selected the black down there. So I'm going to turn on mRGB. I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to hit fill object. So there we go, we've filled it. And you'll also notice over this side, this becomes active. You can go in here and that shows that it's poly painted on there. Okay, and you can see you can turn those off and on. If I go there, you can see I can turn it off and on because it's poly painted. All right, so now your next question was talking about, to turn perspective on now, was talking about rendering out. So just going to put a little bit of noise on this. Just come in here and just add a little bit of noise. Let's increase the scale of that a bit and apply it to mesh just to make it look a little bit better. I think I'll do the same with this one as well, and I'll apply that to mesh. Oh, hold on, let me just edit that. I don't want any color blends. Turn that off. Okay, and apply to mesh just so it's got a little bit of detail going on. All right. So if you just by default hit the BPR render there, what you're going to get is this kind of thing, very solid, very quick to render. However, if you come under the render settings here, you can render via keyshot using the external renderer, or you can come into the BPR render pass areas, and you can see this is the passes that have been pumped out that you can put together back inside Photoshop or something from that initial render that we just did. However, in the properties down here, these best preview render properties, we can change certain things. Like if I come under the shadow there and I change the angle and the blur, now watch these shadows when I do another BPR, they will be softer. There you go. So it can add more time to it as we start to crank these up, because if I start to put more blurring, then I need to make sure that I've got more rays, and that takes longer to do. So let's do it again. It's going to take a lot longer to render out now because it's got a lot more calculations to do. So the BPR render is best preview render, but it renders out a final quality render for you with all of the passes as well. You're just got it on default so that it renders quickly for you to have a quick look. Now look at those shadows, much softer, but we spent a lot more time rendering it out. Now your material, glow material that you've got on there, there's under the render settings, you've got certain things, other passes in here, such as the ambient occlusion, subsurface scatter, BPR filters. So you've got filters in there that you can add to as well, and you've also got transparencies and things like that you can add, preview shadows as well. So there's a lot of options within here, but your final goal is to output these. So you've got rendered booleans as well. Trying to find if there's anything going to be useful for what you're trying to achieve. If I turn on ambient occlusion, SS wax, and I can crank the global ambient up on there. I'm just going to do a quick render, and then I'm going to try and add a glow type to this thing. I think you'd have to put the glowing in post edit, to be honest. Okay, so you can see that render that we pumped out there is a lot more detailed. So if I just have a look at my render passes, you can see that it's put an SS out, a mask, the shadow, ambient occlusion, depth, and you've got the shaded version as well. So let me just check this material that you've got, that you've put in here. This is a material, so I'm selecting that material. Under material nodes down here we've got modifiers, which we can come in and really kind of change the way things are looking. So if I go, I can probably pump up that intensity to give a glow type a look, and I might well maybe use a light to let's try that. Yeah, so there we go. We've got this kind of look going around. So I'd probably come in with that light and change the color of that light to say something more like an orange to reflect that globe there. So I've got that orange coming in there, and maybe change the intensity of this down a little bit. Okay, and render that out. Right, so there we go. This is what we've come up with now. Because we used the light and the material, we upped it and we put these in here. It's given us a much better effect. So what you could do now is, if you're just sending this out, remember you would change your document size. I've left mine all on defaults, but if you're actually rendering this out in another application, you would just click here and render those out to your desktop. So let me just do that quickly now. I'm not going to bother with the floor. I've got this shadow coming in anyway. And what I can do now is I can open this up inside of Photoshop. So these are my files on my desktop. I'm just going to open up the render inside of Photoshop. And here it is here. So I'm going to grab the rest of my images here and just dump them in. Double click, double click, double click, double click. That's our mask, that's our subsurface. So we've got our mask here. I'm just going to take all of these, right hand click and rasterize them. Yep. So we've got something like that. I've got my mask. I'm going to press Control A, Control C to copy it. Going to come back down to this one here, which I'm going to double click and call it diffuse. And then I'm going to pump in a mask for this area, and I'm going to paste that back in there. That should give me, that's actually out, that mask. Right, let me just redo that. I'm going to come back into here, select all, Control A, Control C. Have I got a line appearing there? Okay, that's better. Okay, Control A, Control C, back in here, Control V. Well, that is weird. Okay. Let's just move it down. Get it in position. Okay, just had to knock that into position. I'm just going to clear this top. I'm actually going to take this and just crop it. Okay, so now I can set up a new layer. Just going to shove in a light grey, something like that. Should be fine. Got here now, which I'm going to put on multiply. We'll take that down, something like that. These are all out. When I've pasted them in, they've all gone out, so I'm just having to put them into the right position. So I'm putting these all into multiply. Let me just put it in a multiply again, go to move. Okay, that's better. And finally, let's just put a layer at the top. Just going to up this a little bit. Something like that. And then I could create a new layer on top where I'll sample a bit of this orange and kind of do that. Then I'll go in and put it as a screen. That's quite nice. And then I'll just take a little bit of this away, maybe not that much. And there you go, you've got a kind of glow thing going on. Just change this back color, make it a bit darker. Alright, and if you want, you could put in another colour. Get a bit carried away now, but never mind. Let's drop a colour in here and use this one. I'm going to select this. I'm going to press the Control Shift and I, Control Alt and I. Yeah. Control and I, even. Control and A to select all. Copy, copy. Come into here. Alt on there, paste that in. Okay, got to move it because the position's out. Control D. That's good. And let me just flick here and invert. So you got a little bit of that edge. Now I'm going to come into this mask here, and I'm going to use the magic wand to select inside there so that I can come in here, select the outside. Oh, I'm going to move it into position first. Come on. Okay, and the outside I'm going to put a black. So I'm going to Control Shift I to invert selection, put the black in there. That will give me that subsurface around the very edge. So if I come into that now, you can see it's given us that very edge, which I can then put into something like a screen. It'll just add that slight bit of light around the edge. Now, of course, with the brush, you could come in here with a black and you could paint that out a little bit as well if it's too much around the bottom. But instantly there, you've got a great effect. So I could come into layers now with the base layer and go to something like gradient and maybe push this way a little bit. Okay, click OK, and there you go. So you've got a render. So I showed you a bit of Photoshop composition there, but I just wanted to show you how you can sort of recreate that glow look if you need to inside of Photoshop. So hopefully that's helped you, Mikkel. Yep. Hopefully take a few of my courses and you'll see that I do a lot of these kind of compositing inside of at the end of the course inside Photoshop. So I do kind of try and show you how to do this sort of stuff.